I think that's my list of posts. I'm now going to start by asking our host and the event organizer, Deb Whale, to say a few words. Deb is the Vice President of the Grand River Ag Society.
Brought this little stool because I did this once and I forgot I was on it. And I stepped off and it wasn't a pretty sight. So I just want to give a quick shout out to my fellow directors, many of whom are in the room here today. And without their coordination and cooperation and good thinking over the years, we wouldn't be where we are today. A special acknowledgement to Louise Frost, who worked so hard on all of the logistics for today. So Louise, if you can hear me, thank you very much. I'm just going to give you a very brief introduction to the Grand River Agriculture Society. And is that as good as it gets, that logo? So this is our logo anyway. Where did it go? Okay, so we've got kind of that dark green color that represents all of the efforts we make on behalf of the environment. The green for agriculture, what is supposed to be maroon, is some of our business ventures. And we, for example, run the Grand River Raceway, which you see outside the doors, and you're very welcome to come and join us during the summer. We have this great event space that we put a lot of events on in, and we also host the Elements Casino. But most importantly, I think we are an agricultural society with a difference. One is that we have money, and that's a good thing. The other is that we have goals. We have goals to deal with our impact on agriculture and the environment. And rest assured that we are very confident in the power of new technologies, new thinking, and new research. And we're willing to work and align ourselves with smart people. And there are a lot of smart people in this room today who are developing solutions to problems and who then have the capacity to turn those solutions into productive businesses. And we find that very exciting. So we practice philanthropy also to smart people. Is this burning? Okay, I need the next one. So anyway, we practice philanthropy with smart people and to help smart people do what they're doing. And we also create some very good partnerships so that we can practice what we call impact investing, because we do invest some of our money into the new tech solutions that we see all around us. And we like to work with some excellent companies, all of whom are represented in this room today. Organizations like Ag Capital Canada, the Roundhouse Accelerator, and the 51, to name 3. We also know the power of education. And education, of course, comes in a variety of ways. We donate a lot of scholarships to students on an annual basis. We put on events like SPARK today. And we also, over the course of a year, have many interfaces with the general public. One of the successful philanthropies that we have done over the past year, we call Rapid Response. And we decided to put $50,000 into a pot to be donated to young companies with a proven product and a good sales opportunity. We offered each one of those companies up to $10,000 to go wherever they needed to go to make a sale. That $50,000 resulted in sales of over $3.5 million worth of product. So needless to say, we're doing it again this year, and everything is up and ready to go. The organization that does the administration for us is called CAN Lead, And there is someone here from CanLead today, Laura File. Laura, could you put your hand way up so we can, thank you, so we can see who you are and where you are. So if any young companies are interested in looking into rapid response this year, please see Laura sometime during the day. I give up. So it doesn't matter. We do lots of donations to agriculture and the environment. And over the course of the year, we have given money to Equine Guelph, to Ontario 4-H, to the Ontario Agricultural College, to the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute, Nature Recombined Sciences, Ontario Beekeeping Association, and on it goes. One of the lists that I really wanted to highlight up here was a list of some very important organizations, which we feel strongly enough and admire enough to donate guaranteed annual funding to. And those organizations, again, many of them represented in the room here today, are the Livestock Research and Innovation Council, the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association, the Rural Ontario Institute, 4-H, Food Day Canada, Farm and Food Care, Bioenterprise, and several of our local agricultural societies. So I want to close today with one of my favorite stories, because I think it illustrates both the board and the excellent staff that we have here at the Grand River Agricultural Society. And it goes like this, because it started back in the 1400s, when someone was about to build a very great and impressive building, a cathedral, in fact. And so 3 laborers had been chosen to hire to hack big stones into smaller stones for the construction. A passerby saw the 3 men working, and he went up to the first one and asked him what he was doing. And the answer was, "What does it look like I'm doing? I am splitting rocks." So he then went to the second man and he asked him, "What are you doing?" And the man said, "I'm earning a living." Finally, he went to the third man and asked him too what he was doing. And the answer was, "I am building a cathedral." So I think that is GRAS, small and humble, but keeping an eye on the big picture of progress and aligning ourselves with great partners to help nourish people, animals, and the planet. So I wish you all a very interesting day. I'm sure you will learn lots and meet some interesting new people. And finally, I will leave you with this thought. Consider what your investments in ag tech and green tech can do for the ongoing progress in this country of agriculture, the environment, and the economy. Over to you, Deb.
Thanks very much, Deb. And thanks again to the Grand River Ag Society for hosting, and such a beautiful venue and such excellent food. We really appreciate this. We're also fortunate today to have one of Canadian agriculture's strongest and longest serving champions. But before that, he was also a champion of this local community because he calls it home. I'd like to invite Senator Rob Black forward to say a few words. Rob.
Yeah, do I need the stool? I'm okay. Oh, okay. Thanks, Dr. Stark. I usually call her Deb. Thanks, Dr. Stark, for your warm welcome. And it is my home. This is Fergus has been my home and my family's home since 1834. So we've been around a long time. It's a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to meet with a number of folks. It is my honor and privilege to represent the interests of Canadians, specifically those involved in agriculture, agri-food, and rural communities in the Senate of Canada. And I always look forward to events like this, where it gives me the opportunity to engage with organizations and industry, agri-food, farmers, and those living in rural communities across the country, across the province and country, to learn about what really matters and what needs to be brought to the government's attention. And that's what I will do on your behalf when the opportunity presents. Today, we've come together to celebrate ingenuity and progressive ideas in technology, science, and obviously, of course, agriculture. So I want to say thanks to the Grand River Agricultural Society for their creativity and ability to think outside the general ag society box. Nothing wrong with the ag societies across this province. There's 210 of them. You're doing good stuff, Deb, and your board. Thanks very much. Their hard work has ensured that this room is filled with creative, adept, innovative, and forward-thinking people who, when confronted with a problem, decided to fix it a different way. And because they did, they're contributing significant insight and progressive ideas to technology, science, and agriculture in the agriculture and green space. We have and continue to face difficulties and navigate uncharted territories like climate change, COVID-19 crisis, and labor shortages in agriculture, to name a few. Yet those who are being showcased today have continued to overcome these obstacles, broaden their horizons, not just for themselves, but for those impacted by their important work. This is what the founders of the Grand River Agricultural Society envisioned when they created the association, the Agricultural Society, 150 years ago, first in Elmira and Woolwich Township, and now here in Elora. And I want to say thanks to the board of directors for your continued support in funding the startups being showcased today. It shows us how you appreciate and realize the importance of investing in agriculture. To all those who continue to sustain the sector through advocacy, financial support, and research, I hope you take great pride in experiencing the results of your work and innovation. This has proven to be a difficult challenge in Canada. Early and mid-stage companies often struggle to gain support, but your determination to continue to provide Canadians and the world has created impressive organizations and companies that are sure to succeed and engage in the sector and move it forward. Your tireless efforts and the 5 companies that are being showcased today remain essential to the development of many programs and policies which have greatly impacted our sector. I look forward with admiration to the companies that are being highlighted today. Finding gaps in labor, they've created robotics to pick mushrooms. During the COVID-19 pandemic, one organization shifted from producing alcohol to producing hand sanitizer. And I know I heard recently that they just garnered a significant contract in Eastern Ontario. It really shows the value of organizations and networks like GRAS that help to generate the needed resources, bring people together, and advance bold thinking outside the box, like those that we're spotlighting today. I hope each and every one of you here today enjoys the day and takes great pride in the efforts that are being made to continue and support this sector. Your efforts and those of GRAS and the folks that are being highlighted do not go unnoticed, and I try to raise those issues when I'm in Ottawa. Thanks again to the Grand River Ag Society for inviting me to the symposium. I'm looking forward to it and really do appreciate the invitation. Thanks again.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for being here. I know it's close to home, but I also know you're busy and you have a lot of invitations, so we really appreciate the fact you accepted this one. So most of you are probably here because you follow the startup scene. This is what you're interested in following, and if you do, you can't help but be impressed by the sheer breadth of different companies and the good things that are happening across this province and this country. One of the sectors that's really starting to shine is ag tech. Actually, last year, investments in Canadian agribusinesses grew in 2022, a year when other tech sectors kind of started to slip and struggle a little bit. Some of you know this sector well, but I hope some of you are here to learn more about it and why those of us who do invest in ag tech are excited about it. And so we thought we'd pick things off by hearing from someone like you who was curious and who caught the bug. Andrea Gruza is the managing partner at Bonifield Financial, one of Canada's largest farmland and agriculture investment managers. She works closely with investors to understand how agriculture investments can fit within their portfolios. She also has responsibilities for ESG and sustainability across the firm and is a member of the Bonifield's investment committee. Andrea will confess that at one time she knew nothing about agriculture, but she's fallen in love with the sector and the potential. And Andrea, we're excited to hear your thoughts. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Stark. Deb, both Debs, thank you. And the Grand River Agricultural Society for the ability to participate today. It's really an honor, and what you're doing here is fantastic. It is true. I come from Saskatchewan, but I did not come from a farming family. So I joined Bonneville 4 years ago from a background in finance. And at the time, Bonneville had been around for a number of years, providing financing solutions for farmers in order to help them grow, facilitate their retirement, really, acting as another form of capital in that solution to an industry that has a need for financing and investment, as Senator Black mentioned. So over time, we built up our business on the farmland side, but we also are now providing financing for agribusiness operators to help in other parts of their business. So that's a little bit of the background of how we come to this. And what I thought I would do today is take a step back from ag tech specifically. You're going to hear from some amazing companies. They're going to, provide you with the details of what they're doing. But really what I thought I would do here is provide an overview of how some of the investors who work with us, some are individuals like yourselves, some are large institutional investors, pension funds, how they think about agriculture as an asset class and really the diverse set of opportunities in agriculture and how it can fit within your investment portfolio. So I'll try to get us back on time. I know we're a few minutes late, but that's what I'm going to focus on. So again, as I mentioned, Bonneville has been around since 2009. We've been investing in farmland, really with the intent to preserve farmland for farming, something that I think is becoming increasingly important these days, both with respect to food security as well as some development that's going on. And we've extended beyond this now to provide financing for agribusiness operators. When I'm talking to investors who are looking to support the agricultural industry, are looking to put their dollars against what we're doing at Bonneville, many of them are new to agriculture. They aren't aware of it as an asset class. And so they really need to learn and think about what does it even mean to invest in agriculture? And really, agriculture and agribusiness, it spans a wide variety of businesses. Today, we're going to be focusing a bit more on the ag tech space, but even within ag tech, you're going to see a huge variety of end markets, of business models that you can invest in. You can extend that in agriculture, from the input side, the seed genetics, the fertilizer, you can be thinking about things that look more like mining companies, but they're still in agriculture. Go through to production, think about land-based investments, things related to the crops, the livestock, aquaculture, move down the value chain to processing facilities, production plants, refining, biofuels, and then into distribution and the logistics channels. I mean, there's been so much in the news recently about supply chains and broken down supply chains. COVID really highlighted for us the fragility of that network, and that investment is needed. So as an investor, thinking about getting exposure to agriculture, there's actually a number of different business models and sectors within which you can invest, and for what's right for your portfolio. I think, though, what all of these have in common is that they're exposed to the broader macro drivers of agriculture. And this is what all of my investors and folks who are looking at investing with us are interested in. They want to get exposure to these drivers that they believe are fundamentally going to drive these industries forward over the coming years. And so these are, related to the demand and supply dynamics. So you think about on the demand side, we have a need for food. We have a growing population base. We have changing dietary habits around the world, and we know that we're going to need to produce more food over time to support the growing population base. Then you think about the supply side. We're having a decline in arable land globally. Cities are encroaching on farmland. Climate change is impacting the ability for the existing land to produce what it could previously. Less of a concern in Canada. Canada tends to be seeing a bit more productivity, a bit more of an ability to change what we're growing. But certainly in the US, certainly in parts of Europe, in Australia, in Latin America, they're seeing declining yields. You talk about water availability. I mean, you can't open a news story on CNN without hearing things about, the lack of water in the US. So it's these types of dynamics that people are interested in when they think about, as an investor, as a person here, with my money at risk, what are the pressures that I'm feeling across my investment portfolio, and where are industries where I might see a different set of dynamics. And I think agriculture opens you up to some of those, that direct exposure to some of these really attractive investments if you can be positioned in the right part of the market. So ways that I think are most common that people can gain exposure, technology, I've mentioned it, I think that's the one that we're going to be focusing today. Other ones including farmland, infrastructure, commodities, as well as equipment manufacturing, producers, and processors. Really, as an investor, I think you want to consider, what role are you looking for this to play in your portfolio? Are you looking for this to be an at-risk investment? You want to get a 3 to 5 times multiple upon exit. You're willing to take a lot of risk on it. Is this something where you want to be investing almost like a savings account, in something where you just feel that it's going to tick along and have a base level of value? It's unlikely to decline, but over time it will progressively increase. So you want to think about your risk threshold, your openness for volatility, and what your returns you're looking to achieve, as well as, is this something where you want to be getting high cash yield, or is this something where you want to be getting capital appreciation, or that final end return? And that's going to really drive where you're looking and what type of that investment is that you're looking for in the companies that you're looking to work with. I just thought I would take a really quick minute to put in context. Obviously, I'm using the farmland model because this is more where Bonifield has our experience, and this is where I talk to the majority of our investors about. But just to give you a sense from really a financial perspective, how people think about modeling this in their portfolio, and how you can think about it. Adding farmland to a portfolio can reduce the volatility in your holdings. And so what we've done, and what we show there is, a traditional asset mix from a standard kind of investor with 60-40 equities and fixed income split. That's what you see here on the far right. And you can see an expected return in a typical portfolio of 4.5%. What's really interesting, though, is the number on the bottom. And so the 0.42% is your return per your unit of risk. And so this is effectively what, some folks will call the Sharpe ratio. So you're looking to see really that risk return dynamic. We've added infrastructure and real estate to the portfolio in that middle piece. And you can see the return largely stays the same, but that number on the bottom increases. And what that means is, as you're diversifying more, you're actually taking on less risk. It's becoming a less risky investment for every unit of return that you're taking. When you add farmland to that mix, again, that volatility declines, that additional risk that you take on declines. So I think people don't necessarily think about agriculture in a really traditional kind of portfolio mix, but there are some benefits, and it's something to think about, and there are ways that you can model that when you're thinking about your overall investments. The other things to consider that are incredibly relevant for today, how does the asset class perform in times of market volatility? How does the asset class perform in times of high inflation? A lot of agriculture will perform like farmland, but certainly farmland is the one that we're highlighting here. The green is Canadian agriculture. You can see the bars on the left. We've modeled out some key periods of market volatility and how key asset classes have performed. So, global equities down, not surprising. We're seeing that right now. Canadian farmland, neutral to positive. So, that would be one of those investments when you're thinking about building out your portfolio. If you're looking for something that provides that stability, that downside protection, maybe not the 4Xs that you'd be getting with maybe some other types of investments. You'd be looking for an asset like that. So it's something to think about, and there are ways to consider agriculture and model it from more of a traditional financial perspective. That maybe not everybody kind of considers when they enter into the asset class. The other thing I think is really critical and is so exciting is that Canadian agriculture is just an amazing story. I mentioned, the decline in arable land, the changing climatic conditions, the changing water availability globally. Canada is a region in the world that is increasingly important in terms of food production, and it needs investment. So, what this slide is showing, this is a study that was done a few years ago, so it's a little bit dated, but the story remains the same. The blue areas on that map, they reflect the areas in the world where at that time, those areas didn't have what were considered the ideal growing conditions for a single major global commodity crop. They might have been growing them, but they were growing them par or beyond below what was ideal. But that those regions in the time period 2060 to 2080 were going to have those ideal conditions. So basically what it's doing is it's showing where is there going to be that value optionality in terms of growing regions in the world. Well, you can see that's Canada, that's a little bit of Northern Europe and most of Russia. And nobody's putting money into Russia these days. And probably not for a long time to come. So that really highlights for us, I think sometimes when we sit here in Canada, we don't appreciate what we have. And we are just in an amazing situation whereby the conditions exist for this industry to grow, develop, and become increasingly important. Not only does that mean that there's going to need investment in it, but that those backers and supporters of the industry will have returns to them for doing that. So I think it's fantastic to see a group like this out here looking to support local producers, because sometimes as Canadians, we kind of look south of the border and we think something's bigger and shinier over there. But we really are sitting in, arguably the most attractive agricultural industry in the world, and one that, really, I think, can benefit from all of our investment and support. So that is it for me today, but thank you very much, and I'm excited to hear the presentations.
Andrea, thank you very much. And that was I think a great kickoff and a good reminder. While we are focused today on ag tech, that is a very small sliver of all the potential when you think about agriculture as an asset class. So thank you very much for that. And a reminder that we will have this recorded, so you will be able to go back and take a look at those slides again. I thought that last one was very, very powerful. Okay, we are on time and we are on to the company part of this. We've got 5 companies today that showcase some of the breadth and some of the best of Ontario agriculture startups. You might be kind of surprised that we call them ag tech, because some of them you could call them green tech or clean tech or med tech, because they fit into all those things. But they have great potential to have a significant impact in the agriculture sector, and they are playing in the ag space. Each of the companies will have up to 15 minutes to present, and then we're going to have 5 minutes for questions. So Danny, she'll be here at the right time. She'll be running around with a microphone. Again, we do have people online, so please, if you have a question, let us know that you want a mic, and then we'll get your question captured. And yeah, I think that's it, and we'll get started. So first of all, Michael Curry, the CEO of Mycionics, an automation company with a globally patented robotic mushroom harvesting system. Michael, where are you? Come on up and, oh, there we go. Come on up and get us started.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the Debs and the Grand River Agricultural Society for having me here today. It's good to be back in Elora. I grew up in Elma and Elora, so it's a wonderful, beautiful area to be back in. I'm going to tell you about Mycionics today and what we've developed for the mushroom industry. So mushroom farms are part of the controlled environment agriculture sector, similar to greenhouses. So they can be located anywhere in the world, fully controlled environment. And mushrooms grow all year round. So the production is continual, the harvesting is continual. But the labor portion of it is not a fun job. It's very hard work. It's repetitive, backbreaking. You're reaching into shelves continuously in high humidity rooms all day long. And this is a problem globally, and there's therefore a labor shortage of about 20% in North America. The mushrooms grow very rapidly, so they're growing at 4% an hour, which will double in size in 24 hours. And the retailers want them specifically at 55 millimeters. Therefore, you need the labor there at the right time to pick the mushrooms in order to get the highest value for the fresh market. And because of this labor shortage and the skill required, it takes 3 to 6 months to become proficient to actually pick mushrooms and earn a living wage of doing it. And there's the 20% labor gap in North America and a 40% annual turnover as well. And that labor gap is basically leading to about $200 million in mushrooms, fresh mushrooms that go unharvested every year in North America. So there's it's not a fun job. There's a labor shortage and there is a waste problem. And this is a global problem. Mushroom farms, I'm not sure how many of you have been to one, but this is a classic traditional Dutch aluminum style shelving. And these are found throughout all modern mushroom farms around the world. So digitization and automation and robotics are well suited to controlled environment agriculture because you have a standardized infrastructure in which you can develop robotics and not have to customize them for every farm. And so this is what we have set out to do. And you have it's a good application because of that standardized infrastructure, as well as you have the ability to use the robotics continuously throughout the year. So you're continually harvesting much longer hours throughout the day. The human harvesters are typically harvesting for 8 hours, and the robotics can go 20 to 24 hours a day. And so there's an example. We have focused on the agaricus mushroom, which is most common, about 60% of the global market. That's your common white or brown mushroom that you find in your retail stores. And that's the fresh market, the highest value. And so we've got an incredibly strong team of engineers and background in agriculture. Stefan Globetic, our lead chief technology officer. This was his master's at university to develop a vision system. Basically, everything has been custom developed to be able to fit into that restricted space in the mushroom beds and to be able to collect that data and digitize it and then develop a robotic picking system that won't damage the mushrooms. And our company was founded by Murray Good, who's an actual mushroom farmer and went to the University of Western Ontario in order to develop a solution because of the ongoing labor problem on his farm. So we basically developed a technology stack that is able to collect data in that very confined space, and a modular system that is mobile and movable between the beds and able to actually pick mushrooms continuously without damaging them and trim the stems and put them into a box. And it's been developed on farm. So we have a team of 12 engineers. Our headquarters is located at Whitecrest Mushrooms in Putnam, Ontario. And so being able to be on an actual mushroom farm and develop this technology has been incredibly beneficial and rewarding as we're dealing continuously throughout the day with all the challenges of operating on an actual mushroom farm and getting feedback from the growers and the workers and seeing what works. The idea was basically to have minimal intrusion into the existing infrastructure so that we don't ask farmers to invest millions to convert their existing farms in order to adapt to robotics. So the harvester is mobile, and our lift allows the harvester to go to every level of the bed. And then the packer follows alongside the bed and receives the mushrooms, trims the stems, and puts them into a basket where they're weighed. And this is all common form factor of existing mushroom farm equipment, where the trolleys that follow along there, and you'll see in a video in a second, are very similar to what humans use to access all the mushrooms on the farm. And the harvester as well as and the lift are common used as well for ruffling of the beds. So our vision system, when it scans, it's basically a 3D line scanner and collects a point cloud image where it uses machine learning to basically identify what are the mushrooms and what is the compost, and where are the mushrooms located, what is their size, what is their orientation. And then that information is fed through a series of algorithms to come up with a picking strategy. So which mushroom to pick, how to approach it without damaging others around it. And this has never been done in the mushroom industry. These beds have never been digitized before. So this is what we use to actually pick the mushrooms, but the amount of data we're collecting and the ability to do to learn about the crop and how it's growing and to affect it with overlaying it with the climate information is a very large opportunity, we believe. So you'll see here, this is basically a heat map. This is your 7 layers high on your mushroom bed and 30 sections long. And after we've scanned the whole bed, we can see where the mushrooms of, if we ask it, where the mushrooms that are 48 millimeters in size. And it will tell us that so that we know where to go and start harvesting the mushrooms, as opposed to wasting our time down an area where the mushrooms aren't ready to be picked, and go directly to where they need to be picked, and therefore maximize productivity and do GRAS harvesting, only picking the mushrooms that are ready to be picked. And this information, we have microclimate sensors on the actual harvester, so we're collecting CO2 levels, humidity, temperature, etc. And we can see where there's heat pockets in the bed where you might not have enough airflow, ventilation, and therefore the mushrooms are growing more rapidly, releasing CO2. And there's all sorts of data insight that we're starting to show growers. We can show where you can see patterns in here where there may be no mushrooms, and you might have a clogged sprinkler on your 5th level, section 15, which you'd never get to with human. There's a few minutes video which give you a much better sense. So that is it in a nutshell. I'm not an engineer, but I can tell you that is not easy to do. So we have market traction today. We have 6 of those systems working at Whitecrest Mushrooms under a picking service contract. So we are paid per kilogram that's successfully harvested. And this is a common, becoming a more common business type model with robotics and offering a service, a picking service, as opposed to making the technology available to all farms. So they're gonna have to put millions of dollars down to adopt brand new technology. So we get paid for successfully harvesting quality mushrooms that will meet fresh market standards. And $1 a kilogram is approximately the all-in cost that farmers would be paying currently for human labor. We also developed a stationary, using our technology stack, our vision system, our gripper. Christian's Group is the largest mushroom machine and farm builder in the world, based in the Netherlands. They build about 60% of the new mushroom farms globally. And they have a new farm design called a drawer harvester, where the actual human pickers are in a fixed location and the mushrooms come to them on a mobile beds. And so we've adapted our technology in partnership with Christian's to have a stationary system, which is picking, has a dual gantry and can pick 30 mushrooms per minute. And we have 3 signed LOIs with their farms that they've built in Netherlands and in BC to adopt our robotics into those farms. So we've developed a prototype. We're taking that to Mushroom Days in the Netherlands in a couple of weeks, and we'll be displaying it to all of their clients. It's the largest mushroom trade show in the world. I'm sure many of you will be there. And South Mill Champs is one of the top 3 growers in North America. We're doing a trial with that system on their farm in November in British Columbia. They have one of these drawer systems, drawer farms. They also are very interested in our shelf harvester, which you just saw in the video for, they're building one of the largest farms in Pennsylvania currently, and they're about an $800 million company. And that is the projected revenue just from the shelf, the drawer harvester LOIs that we have in place. So lumpy revenue, but those are basically, they've said if we can develop it and it picks according to what we've said, they will adopt it onto their farms. So the global mushroom industry is about $55 billion at retail, and at farm level, just for the annual harvesting cost, and the harvesting component is the largest portion of the production, which is about 40%. And so in Europe, that's about $1 billion market. In Canada and the US, when you account for the lost mushrooms each year, that's about $1 billion market annually for just the labor cost. And there's some of the key players and their annual spend on labor. And our competitive landscape, we believe, because of our data collection, the speed at which we're collecting it, and the value of the data, compared to some other technologies that are folding beds or robots in a different angle, which can't collect that data and the value of that. We believe we are well in the lead in terms of anyone in the world that actually has operating systems on farm. And just quickly about the yield improvement, because you're GRAS harvesting, just picking the right size of mushrooms as opposed to humans will pick them earlier, and not always the right size. You're able to get about a 5% increase through GRAS harvesting, and through consistent stem trimming. The stems are very dense, about 3 millimeters, 0.3 grams per millimeter. So you can cut them at a maximum length and consistent straight cut. You can get about another 3% yield increase. And then weighing of the tills, humans are usually about 4 to 5% over, whereas the robotics are about 1% overage because of the consistency of the size. Okay. That's giving me a signal. All that. We've got 5 patents and the largest global robotics mushroom harvesting portfolio. And we're raising $5 million in equity.
We have time for just a couple questions. Does anyone? Oh, Joe, start us off.
Michael, you're co-located at Whitecrest.
Oh, so
How-
so that way the people want.
Hi, Michael. Good presentation and congrats on your progress. How important has it been for you to be co-located at like a customer's place at Whitecrest in advancing something this sophisticated?
It's incredibly important. The fact that this was started by a mushroom farmer because he had a real world problem. We're not developing, you know, a Ferrari here to go sell someone that doesn't need one. It's been incredibly valuable that Murray had a real problem. And then we were able to actually locate our engineers and our whole team on a mushroom farm, as opposed to being in a lab downtown and going out to the farm once a month. This is extremely complicated to develop something that actually works in the real world. So it's been incredibly important.
In the video, you showed someone with a tablet selecting which racks, or whatever the right term is, to which were ready for harvesting. Could you take the automation even further? And this row of racks were planted, or whatever the right word is, whenever you predict they'll be due to start harvesting 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon. The machine automatically comes along because it knows where to go, harvests them out, selects which ones to harvest without any human intervention. So you can essentially no longer require pickers.
We are doing that currently. We're not going to be able to pick 100% of the mushrooms. There are always mushrooms along the edges of the beds or very dense clusters where you're going to need human interaction. You need humans to unload the machines currently as well. But the technology is now at the stage where it scans the bed, it knows where to start, it can predict growth and therefore predict yield, etc. But that is the evolution of it, is to basically reduce the human component, but there will always be a human component involved with the harvest.
I'm going to let one more question, and then you are raising, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds to explain the details of your raise. Okay. So I think there was another handout.
Good to see you, Michael. Nice to see you guys making such progress. It's wonderful. Just a quick question regarding some of the partnerships you have. What's the installation period from start to finish to get somebody up and running and being able to use the integrated system?
We really focused on minimizing that amount of change that was required by farms. So the beds are very standardized on these farms, and basically we put racks down the front. It takes about half a day to install the racks down the front and a rail along the side. So the elevator, our lift, goes up and down on those 2 racks. And then that rail is a common rail used for other trolleys, etc. And that's what our packer does. So per room, about half a day.
Okay, so 30 seconds, what you're looking for in terms of investment?
Yes, so we're looking for, we're trying to raise $5 million basically to execute on our path forward and grow our team and take advantage of the letters of intent that we have in place. So going to mushroom days, doing our trials in British Columbia, and basically getting us to break even in profitability. And to date, there's $5 million in private capital that's been invested in the company. I'm an investor myself. Our chief technology officer is an investor, and our chairman has basically backed the company to date. And we've also been fortunate enough to work with a lot of great government entities in getting loans and grants to develop the technology.
Thank you very much, Michael. And if anybody is interested in hearing more, we will have an opportunity. We do have all the companies have tables at the back. So during the networking reception, you'll have a chance to talk further. Great start. Now we're going to hear from Dr. Tyler Whale, who's a partner and Senior Vice President, Business Development of Biodiffusion Technologies. And Biodiffusion Technologies is creating bio-based binders and sealants for a wide variety of agriculture and industrial uses. Tyler, over to you.
Thanks, Deb. Because we have to run a tight ship and keep on schedule, I won't take too much time, but thank you, GRAS. Really excellent to see such a high quality room of participants and interested people in the ag tech sector. I grew up on a 7th generation dairy farm, and for the past 20 years have been involved in ag tech in some form, whether it's research or the partnerships that it takes between academics and industry, and more recently facilitating entrepreneurs to get their products to market. So I've worked with a number of people in the room who have developed technologies as well, and now I am that entrepreneur. So Biodiffusion Technologies is a company that makes a bio-based resin, a plant-based resin, that is both a binder and a sealant. So you can think of this as a bio-based or a plant-based cement, a plant-based bitumen, a glue, or some kind of a polymeric coating that you put on things to protect them from nature. Our tagline, inspired by nature and resilient by design, is certainly exactly what this material is. It is derived from nature, but we have modified the chemistry to some extent so that it is stable, it works, and it is transportable, for example. We are seeking $1.5 to $2 million in our current round. So my grandfather, George Jones, also known as the pioneer of corn in Ontario, told me that the three things that made modern humanity possible were plastics, petroleum, and pesticides. I've added to that list. I put fertilizer and concrete on there, and we can argue, but there's a number of things that we need in this world to make our modern lives good. Unfortunately, it's probably the same list that we hear about regularly that we don't need to get off of, but we need to modify how we're using these kinds of things and how these products are part of our lives going forward. Certainly, the massive scale of use is unsustainable. And again, I think we know what unsustainable means in terms of the longevity of the human species. We do have what I'll call a blind addiction to these products. And I say blind because most people do not know the scale. They don't have the capacity to think about the scale on which we use these products. And therefore, we're often ignorant to the fact that you can do something about it or that there is something better. And how do you possibly change some of these industries for global impact? And then the last point is that fossil fuels, really, this is just a chemistry problem. Fossil fuels have 150 years head start on the bioeconomy, on the chemistry that we now need. Fossil fuels are based on plants as well. When I say we have a plant-based bitumen, I really mean we've got an above-ground plant-based bitumen. So to put it into perspective, 50 million acres, are covered in the horticulture market every year in layers of plastic mulch. Great impact in agriculture. It's one of the most useful products we can have. But when you think about 50 million acres, that is driving from Sarnia to Ottawa, from Niagara Falls to Cochrane, and every field you see along that way is covered in 6 layers of plastic every year, every single field. And that's just an example of the garbage coming out of the field, if they can even pull it out of the field, single-use plastic. In terms of things like the landscaping market, North America, about 300 million pots used every year. Most of these are not recycled. If you think you're putting them in your bin and they're doing something, it is really not doing all that much, less than 10% recycle rate, but just an enormous amount of plastic being used in this industry as well. One of our applications is road stabilization. And again, to put this into perspective, what the global market spends on maintenance of secondary roads every year is $3.7 trillion. All of that dust is part of the road. It's blowing away. It's exposing the little round rocks that are part of the gravel. They get chucked off into the ditch, and we add new gravel every year. That's getting harder to find, more expensive. And then you see the dust on the plants. Now, I don't know that any study has ever properly been done, but if you think about those plants photosynthesizing like the stuff that got freshly rained on, I'm sure there's some kind of an impact. And of course, fine particulate matter is becoming more and more of a health issue. You hear about PM 2.5 to 10. These are particulate matter sizes of dust that get into your lungs and cause things like cement lung and other issues that are not good for your everyday life. And concrete, that's not the focus of today, but it's just such an interesting one. At 40 billion tons used annually, it is the second most used product in the world, other than water. And again, I can't imagine anybody who hasn't heard recently, if you think about the environment, that concrete is one of those things that has to change, that has to improve. It's 8% of the GHGs or so globally annually. So really what the solution is to this is use new sunshine instead of old. Do your best to use above ground sunshine. And indeed, Mother Nature is one of the best chemists that we have yet to harness fully. So that's what this technology of ours is doing. It's 100% plant-based binder that is added as a protective sealant and or an ingredient that has cleaner solutions. I will not say clean because we're not 100% of the solution, but cleaner solutions for construction material, infrastructure. And of course, it improves material properties for things like pulp-based packaging, or fertilizer coatings, or some of the things that I'll talk to you about in a little bit. So what we produce is a 100% bio-based resin. It looks like coffee with cream in it when it's all done. It's a water-based emulsion that when applied and when the water flashes off, or we call it curing, it creates a hydrophobic or a water-hating barrier on things that is acid resistant, it's UV resistant, it's temperature tolerant, etc. It is readily biodegradable and compostable in soil only, really. On a stockpile, for example, it'll last for many, many years. In a road, it will last for many years. And again, it's formulated for the circular economy. There is no waste that comes out of the manufacturing facility. Again, our primary inputs are electricity and water, and then these ingredients that make the resin, which I cannot tell you about. That's proof that we have a plant. We built our plant last year in August. It looks simple, and it is simple by design. That little 20-foot sea container makes about a gallon a second of our material. So it's just-in-time manufacturing. We have storage capacity simply so that in our early stages, we have enough material that we can use in the applications that we need to use them before we become good customers of the raw ingredients that we need. You got to have some kind of supply. But essentially, this facility is capable of 100 million gallons per year. Low capex, low opex. It's designed for rapid scalability. We could build 10 per year of these facilities with our current engineering partners. And we're profitable at about, it actually shouldn't say 4 million, it should say 500,000 liters per year. So at 0.5%, we are profitable in this company. We'll sell a liter for about $4. You can do the math. When this facility is operational, it is a money maker. And it is operational, I should say. It's in Cambridge. So in terms of the markets, again, I talked about secondary road maintenance at $3.7 trillion per year. This is an issue in agriculture. We do have yards and lanes and private roads and dust and issues driving tractors down poorly maintained secondary roads, for example. Our lead markets are roads and mining. So it isn't agriculture first, and that's where the stockpile maintenance comes in. So I put that on the slide just to show you that wind and rain-based erosion or rain infiltration, moisture infiltration into stockpiles is something that we can prevent and what we are selling first to market. However, in the agriculture market where there is ample opportunity, as well as many other markets, plastic mulch, showed a picture of the 50 million acres that could be covered with a compostable liquid instead of a piece of plastic. The landscaping pots, which could be made out of pulp instead of plastic, as long as they have the right characteristics for industry, because people don't want to change too much. You want the same kind of value that you're getting from plastic, but it would be nice if that change were easy for you in terms of price, process, competitiveness, performance, etc. Plastic packaging, again, it's a $60 billion annual market and growing. Those are things like your little squeezy yogurt tubes or your cottage cheese containers, all the various things that we use in terms of packaging, your takeout containers, for example. And then fertilizer coatings, a very interesting market where controlled release fertilizers are coated in plastics and polymers. It is becoming probably the biggest contamination source of microplastics in the world. It's not the oceans, it's about 5x in what you see in land. And this is a really important opportunity to innovate in the agriculture industry. In terms of our competition, I'm just going to focus on these three. This is a very interesting slide. There we go, we do have a pointer. So really look at the top in terms of the market, and look at the bottom if you can see it in terms of cost savings. So basically in roads, our resin as compared with other hard surfaces, so you can maintain a gravel road without having to put chip seal or asphalt on it, is about a 64 to 85% savings, roughly. In terms of erosion control, erosion I haven't even talked about, but that's been estimated by I think it's I don't know, the WTO or one of those large global organizations at a $13 trillion annual problem. It is not being measured. It is not being addressed in any meaningful way, but we are about 33 to 47% cheaper than the current solutions. And that plastic mulch that I told you about, the 50 million acres, were roughly about 50% cheaper than the plastic mulch. So it is not a question of you have to spend more to do the right thing. Traction so far. So this company is actually old. The technology is at least 20 years old, but it was shelved for a period of time, not when the green revolution was exciting, but now we're in that period of time where it becomes more interesting. So we do have historic sales from a pilot facility that could produce 500,000 gallons a year. What's that? 2 million liters or so. In terms of where we sold it, was primarily into the mining industry, into stockpile sealants. So again, an existing business model that was attractive, we just couldn't produce enough of the stuff. So in terms of current sales since August, and again, that plant was operational, it's being commissioned. Then the winter time came where it's not ideal road building or stockpile sealing conditions. We are just starting our sales. We've got about 100,000 closed, 500,000 being quoted, and anticipate that maybe by the end of 23 we'll have 1 million, unless something significant happens. And that is what this traction relationship with CRH. CRH is an Irish-based company. It's the biggest road building company in the world. In Ontario, they own Dufferin Construction and Ashgrove Cement as examples. We have an MOU with them that's migrating towards an LOI and multiple streams of application that are market ready for them. We have interest from several multinational companies, and our client list will look something like this: Mosaic, Nutrien, Lafarge, CMPC, Stella Jones, PPG. PPG is a paint company. Stella Jones is a pressure treatment company. We won't talk about those, but Mosaic and Nutrien as fertilizer companies are ag relevant. We've raised 3.3. We've got about $750,000 in soft funding to date. Our business model, basically, look at this last piece here: supply only strategy. So we make a product, we sell it to people who can use that product. So it's essentially, we're looking for clients who can apply the product in the industries that they know very well. We do not want to build roads or maintain mines. In terms of our go-to-market, we have 3 different pathways right now. One is sales ready, and that's in roads. In industrial trials, we have substantial packaging trials ongoing with Conestoga and several companies, Canadian companies, Green First pulp molded products and competitive green technologies, and then many international companies in the packaging world as well. Fertilizer, same thing. There are trials with Mosaic, Northern Nutrients, and Nutrien. And in plastic mulch, really, that's at the early stages of research trials to see if we are a comparable on the fields. We've got a skilled team with expertise in packaging, in roads, and in agriculture, in business strategy. And interestingly, I'm complimenting lawyers. Boy, was it useful to have a lawyer on our team. In terms of financials, again, just a very high level overview of monthly burn rate, cash on hand, et cetera. We have product inventory in the $400,000 range, and again, that plant that you saw is capable of $400 million with production, albeit more likely 250 to 300 is reasonable. And our ask is 1.5 to 2, a $250,000 minimum investment per investor. Really, this is to scale the growth of the company and complete the automation of the plant. So with that, I'm done, Deb.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sure there's some questions.
Stunned silence.
Yes.
Thanks, Tyler. Quick question. Have you done any work looking at plastics that could be used to replace bale wrap? Which is an odd product. It touches the ground at the bottom, but you want to biodegrade in the long run.
A lot of people have asked that question, Mike, and the nature of a liquid being sprayed onto a round bale that has these voids underneath where it sits on the ground is going to be really difficult. We could probably make a paper product that would act like plastic and still be wrappable around bales. We're looking for a similar solution in bunk silos. Big market, horticulture, that 50 million acres I told you about, but you're onto something for sure.
I think there was a hand.
Hi, without going into details of what plant or the process, I'm just curious, are you able to utilize input from like regionally? Is it something that would be new?
Yeah.
And can you use byproducts and waste streams for that input?
Yeah, all great questions. In terms of supply chain resilience of our key materials, using waste chain is not a good idea. So we are using commodity products that are manufactured on every continent except for Africa and Antarctica. Some of it comes from the forestry industry, from black liquor, if you've heard of that. It is not cellulosic, it is not lignin based. And it's really the fatty acids that are also not secured from food sources. So that's probably the best I can do in revealing what it is. But ultimately, the hard part is that what Mother Nature uses to protect herself from salt and stress and freeze thaws and rain and all the kinds of things that you can imagine the roots of a tree or the stalk of a corn plant being exposed to, those are the same kinds of things that we're using in our product. I think importantly, non-cellulosic and non-lignin. So a lot of materials are out there these days that have those components in them, and they don't work as well.
Is there a question online, please? Oh, okay. Other questions? Oh.
I'm not sure if I missed it in your presentation, but I'm trying to get a sense of what has been done to protect your position in the marketplace. I think I heard that the company is about 20 years old. I don't know if is there IP that's been protected, patents, that sort of thing, or how are you going to protect your market opportunity?
Yeah, we have IP. It is currently trade secret. So in terms of the formulation, the engineering, and the software that runs that plant, it is not intuitive. There was some serendipity for sure that happened in creating this material. And we are looking for use patents at this point as these applications scale. So it's not obsolete at this point, being 20 plus years old. If you're wondering about a patent, patents will be forthcoming now in terms of the know-how and how this material gets incorporated into road building projects. In fact, I got to give a shout out to Senator Wellington, who is doing one of our first public road trials here on the 8th line. If anybody knows where the Sealing gravel pit is, then you'll know that's a beat up road. And so we'll have our material going in there this summer.
I do know the 8th line. I can vouch for that. It makes a difference. This is valuable.
You described a wide variety of different products, which presumably all have to biodegrade at different rates. Is the difference in rate of degradation simply a question of formulation, and therefore as an opportunity for a new product comes along, you can simply adapt the formulation and suddenly you've got another sales channel?
What a great and difficult question. Are you a scientist, per chance? It degrades in soil, and when we want it to degrade, so packaging, the big question is it water degradable, is it backyard compostable, or is it official, the 40% or 40 degrees in humidity compostable? We don't have all of those answers yet. We know it is something that degrades in soil. So when you're thinking about fertilizer, for example, what microbes, we just did some research with Metagenome Bio in Waterloo, what microbes are responsible for the degradation of this product, and might you then formulate products to add some of those microbes into the formulation if you need a degradation at a certain rate? It's a really tough thing to answer. What I can tell you is that your road won't degrade. Your stockpile sealant won't degrade, or the liquid tarp that we put on top of the stockpile. But your plastic mulch, if you will, the surface coating on soil, will eventually degrade. It could be many years until you till it into the soil. So that stuff can stay on top, unlike plastic, but it can also be tilled into the soil, and it will augment the carbon source, the nutrients, I suppose, of the microbiome in the soil. We're doing a bunch of research to figure out exactly what degrades it and what the impacts are to soil health.
Okay, I think we're going to have to wrap things up there. Thank you very much, Tyler. You'll have a chance to talk to him afterwards if you wish. So all of our presenters have done a wonderful job of staying on time, and as a result, you do get a 10-minute break. There is still coffee and drinks over to the side, maybe a little bit of dessert left, and we'll see you back at 1:35, please. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone if you could find your seat again, please. We'll get started. This is going to be the tricky part, I know. It's really great to hear the conversation and the buzz in the room. I need a bell or something. Need a cowbell. Hey, I think we'll get ourselves started again. So we heard about mushrooms and we heard about biosealants. Now we're going to talk fruit. And I'd like to ask Tess O'Mara, the Director of Partnerships from Vivid Machines, to join me up here. Vivid Machines is using vision technology to revolutionize the fruit supply chain. Tess, welcome, and over to you.
Hello, Grand River Ag Society. My name is Tess. I am the Director of Partnerships for Vivid Machines, and I am so thrilled to be here. We are a new ag tech startup based out of Toronto, and our vision is to use clean tech to help solve the problem of food security. So 30% of produce doesn't make it to the grocery store because it's blemished, the wrong color, the wrong shape, or gets lost in the fruit supply chain. On the other hand, more than half of farms in North America have lost money every year since 2013. The world is changing, and it is becoming harder for the fruit industry to grow and market fruit profitably. So apple growers know that they have to balance the number of fruit per tree and the fruit size, because trees only have so much energy to grow apples. So too many apples on the tree yield small fruit, which sell for less. Too few apples, you get larger fruit, which sell for more, but you get less bins per acre. So growers do something called thinning, where they manually count, measure, and remove blossoms and fruit from their trees. And this is a difficult and labor-intensive process to control with thousands of trees per acre. Yet, if they do this correctly, they can increase their profits almost double and ensure good return bloom for the following year. And then months before harvest, the growers, they tell the supply chain how much fruit to expect. And the supply chain uses these numbers to plan packaging, storage, logistics, and to sell contracts to retailers. And a pack house from Nova Scotia, they told us that one of their growers told them to expect 3 bins of plums. A few months later, they received 20. They didn't have the storage, the logistics, or the sales contracts to move the plums. So unfortunately, a lot of these plums are wasted. And when these estimates are so wrong, a lot of these retailers, they stop doing business with the pack house, which impacts the growers upstream. So the fruit supply chain is tightly interconnected, yet it is outdated. They need timely and accurate data. So we built the means to capture that data, introducing VividX. Usually we have a system up here to show you, but today they're all actually being deployed to customers. Our growers, they've been fondly referring to it as Wall-E because it's a cute little robot, but please do not tell Disney. So the grower, they mount Wall-E to their tractor or their ATV, and they go up and down the orchard while they do things like cutting the grass. And then, oops, wrong slide. Go back. The video, I don't know how to get it going. Can you get my video going or no? Oh, there's my video. So here we are, back to cutting the grass up and down the orchard. And then using machine learning, our algorithm can count and size apples in real time. And growers, they have their app, their control app with them. And in real time, they can see the number of trees that they've scanned, the number of fruit, and their fruit size. And this is important because they can scan their orchard, direct their labor, and then go back and validate that the right thing has been done. And then when they get back to their desk, they take Wall-E and they plug it into the internet and upload the data. And essentially, they then have a digital twin of their orchard at their desktop, which has accurate counts, sizes, tree counts, and locations of each and every tree in their orchard. And this is huge. I think last year I asked one of our growers, like, how many trees do you have in your orchard? And they had no idea. They had an estimate because they knew when they planted the trees, and they can calculate an average of how many trees die per year, but they had no idea how many trees there were. And then they're supposed to tell the pack houses how much fruit they're going to grow this year, what size, what variety, and they use a lot. It's an art. Growing apples is an art, and it's how they feel, and they do a pretty good job. But we bring the science and the data to the growers. Digital twin, location, like every tree mapped in their orchard, fruit count, size, and image. It's something they've never had before. And this is what our camera sees. We use the latest in computer vision, and using multispectral images, our system can detect chemical and physical properties that the human eye can't see. And with this video feed, we can do some really neat things. We can detect green apples on green leaves. We can detect apples behind leaves, solving the very difficult problem of occlusion. And we can size really small fruitlets, like up to 10 millimeters in size. So thanks to our multispectral data capture and our on-edge processing, we do some really great things. We do fruit count and size distribution, which the farmers use for thinning and for yield prediction. And we do tree location. And using RTK, it is exactly located each tree in their orchard. And we have a roadmap to do some exciting things in the future. And the one I'm most excited about is early disease detection. We're working right now to detect fire blight in apples because our camera can see it before the human eye. We are also working with Cornell Agritech to detect downy and powdery mildew in grapes. And this is huge because downy and powdery mildew is the most devastating grape disease in upstate New York, where we work. So we've developed a system which does real-time accuracy from the time of blossom to the time of harvest. And the growers, they greatly get a lot of value out of this, as well as the whole fruit supply chain. And what I love about this system is it's really easy to use and it's relatively cheap. So we lease our sensor for $5,000 a year. And the reason we lease it is that if there's ever a problem with the firmware or the hardware or any of the models, we just swap it out. So trying to make it turnkey for the growers. And then using software as a service, we currently sell thinning and yield prediction at $60 per acre per year. And for context, apple growers make an average of $3,000 per acre right now. And growers that are using our system are seeing an increase in profit of $800 per acre. So I've talked a lot about predictions, and they are predictions because we use machine learning and artificial intelligence to analyze early season scans and predict the growth curve and the number of fruit into the future. And this is really neat because we don't even have to scan every single row. We can scan every third row and still get accurate predictions. And how do we know our predictions are accurate? Because we've been comparing grower pack-out counts to our predictions, and we are consistently within 90%. I think for this example here, this is Honey Crisp, we were 95% accurate. And the more data that we collect, the more accurate our system becomes. Last year, we had 8 systems on farm covering 3,000 acres of apples. Right now, we've converted most of them to full paying customers, and we're deploying to 14 customers today. We have customers in Canada, Nova Scotia and Ontario, as well as the US, focusing on the large apple growing states, Washington, New York, and Michigan. And we have a few customers in New Zealand. And that's fantastic for us because they use our systems during off season. And we have a strong pipeline. And also just want to quickly mention that we're starting to do research in grapes. So we have a research partnership with a large grower in New York. And we're looking to collect data to build models for yield quantification in grapes. And as I mentioned, we're working with Cornell Agritech on downy and powdery mildew disease detection. And we're also working in New Zealand. As I mentioned, we brought a system and it was scanning and detecting kiwi fruits on the very first day. So we're really pleased about that. That was not in the deck that I saw, so I'm going to skip that. Apples is our beachhead markets. If we can sell to the top 20% of apple producers in accessible markets, it's a $1 billion opportunity for us. And this opportunity only scales as we move into new fruits and build new models. And we have a fantastic team working with us who are dedicated and motivated to use clean tech and solve food security. Jenny, she's our CEO. She grew up on a farm. She's an engineer. She became an industrial designer and a very, very successful product executive. Jonathan, our CTO, he has a PhD in physics, and then he did a postdoc research fellow at Mila, which is Canada's premier AI institute in Quebec. There are very few founders with this unique combination of skills. And the rest of our team, they're experts in machine learning, data science, agriculture, business operations, and we have really great investors, advisors, both in the US and Canada. And we've just, we're very pleased that we've just closed our seed round, and we've raised $3.5 million US. I think a formal announcement's being drafted as I speak. And we've also been supported by fantastic government partners. And we hope to continue working with them this year. A big shout out to BioEnterprise. They're huge supporters. AgriScience, IRAP, SDTC, and CFIN. So fruit production is changing, and it's becoming very difficult to grow and be profitable. So we've developed an easy-to-use, comprehensive solution that helps growers grow more high-grade fruit and brings critical real-time data down to the supply chain. If you're interested to learn more, we are currently doing in-orchard demos in Canada and in the US, and you can always reach Jenny at this email address. Thank you very much.
Excellent job. I should mention that Tess was pitch hitting for Jenny, who was fun to come here today, but wasn't able to. So excellent stepping up there. Any questions here? Ask her to defend that slide. She doesn't want to talk about it. Deb, you look like you're going to start us off.
Would it be difficult to make the technology work for peaches and nectarines?
No, I always joke with my team, I wanted to go from apples, which are small, to watermelons. I thought it'd be a lot easier to see. But we're also picking up blossom clusters, which are completely different. So with the computer vision and the machine learning, we can pivot from fruit to fruit. So right now we're going from apples to grapes, which again is a very different shape, and then kiwi fruit.
Thanks, Tess. I like the idea of the disease surveillance as well. Does that allow a farmer to spot apply instead of just a generic pesticide application when you detect something early?
Yes, absolutely. That's the whole intent. One is to reduce food waste and to reduce agricultural inputs.
Do you have any experience in applying the technology into nut crops, particularly almonds?
There have been a few people asking us to look into that. So I know it's on our roadmap, but we're not there now, probably in a few years.
Do you have any competitors?
There are a few competitors. There's probably 2 or 3 that are our main competitors. The big difference is that we are real time. There's nobody else that can give these insights in real time. And for size distribution, a lot of our competitors kind of give a heat map, and we can kind of give exact size measurements of each fruit on the tree. So there's a differentiating factor there. And finally, the other big factor that makes us different is that a lot of them have sort of relative location positioning, and we have absolute positioning. So that makes a big difference as well.
I had a question. Can you talk about your logistics? So you said you own them all and you send them out. So do you manufacture here, and what's the plan as you go global?
Yes, so currently we are manufacturing it here at a third-party company just outside of Toronto. So we design the cameras. Jonathan was building the first versions in the office. We design them, we iterate, we make new prototypes, and we test. So I think we have 35 cameras we're manufacturing this year in Mississauga. And, as we roll them out, we deploy them to customers. At the end of the season, we get them back. And, over the last 2 years, we've had different versions of the hardware. So then we scrap them and build new ones. And to help with our revenue, as we're also looking to use these cameras in places like New Zealand or South America, so that we can capture value out of them during our winter. And in terms of what happens when we roll out across the world, I don't know. Good question.
Stay tuned. Any other questions for Jess? Joe?
Can you comment on your go-to-market? I don't think I saw that in your slide, direct to farm or through retail or how?
Yeah, so currently we're going,
Sorry, can you repeat it for those online?
Can you comment on your go-to-market strategies? Is it direct to farmer or are you working through retail or consultants or so on?
yeah, so currently the 14 customers that we have are direct to market. So we're going directly to the customers. Although we are working with agronomists in New Zealand who will probably be a reseller for us just because we do not have sales operations over there. Although I did volunteer to be the first staff member.
Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming and spending some time with me. Next, we're going to hear from Omid McDonald. Omid is the founder and CEO of Dairy Distillery. Dairy Distillery turns a waste product from the dairy industry into some excellent alcoholic beverages. If you've not tried it, I suggest you do. Hand sanitizer during COVID and is now pivoting to green ethanol. So Omid, over to you. Looking forward to hearing your story.
Well, thanks very much to the Grand River Agricultural Society to have me back. And thanks, Deborah, for all the support on this. There was some really neat tutoring that we all got before, which I've tried to incorporate in my presentation, and the lesson was keep it short. So that's what I will do. So at Dairy Distillery, we work with lactose. And 5% of a glass of milk is lactose. This lactose is separated and concentrated in two main byproducts in dairy. One is milk permeate, which is a byproduct of ultra-filtered milk production, and the other is whey permeate. And I'll just use the term permeate for both of them. In the United States, there's about 500,000 tons of permeate produced annually. There's an opportunity to produce another 2 million tons of permeate using whey that's currently being dumped or fed to pigs. And the thing with permeate is that lactose can't be just dumped in the rivers or on the fields due to its biological demand and must be dealt with. So how is this permeate being dealt with? Well, 80% of it ends up to pigs. So that the permeate is either blended in liquid form or powder form with rations for pigs. It's not that the pigs actually enjoy it much. It's not like filet mignon for the pigs in any way. It's just a way of disposing of this material. And when they dry this stuff, it's a very expensive process, also very carbon intensive. It takes a lot of natural gas to dry a ton of permeate. You'll see why that's important in this presentation. So really for dairy processors and ultimately dairy farmers, there's little to no value from this permeate. So we looked at this and said, well, let's not waste such a beautiful sugar. And it truly is a beautiful sugar. And if you haven't tasted our vodka, I recommend it. There are samples in the back. I should have mentioned this at coffee break. There's some cream liqueur over there. So do take a sample. So we started out with the idea of making vodka with this sugar. If you were here last year, that's what I was here to talk about. It's been very well received. We just hit a milestone of 10,000 cases, which for a distillery, that's sort of the transition between a craft and medium-sized distillery. And you can now find our products at LCBOs across Ontario. And we've been perfecting since 2018 our technology and our process of converting lactose into ethanol. And alcohol and ethanol, you can use those words interchangeably. And we take a ton of permeate and turn it into about 165 gallons of ethanol. And for our process, which we've greatly improved over the last 5 years, we applied for patents and we have better results than anything we've seen in the published literature. So from that core technology, the ability of converting lactose into ethanol, out has come essentially 3 business streams. As I talked about, vodka has become a business on its own and is doing quite well. We were thrust into this hand sanitizer business with COVID. who knew that vodka and hand sanitizer are essentially the same thing? And in the 1 year during COVID, we produced 300,000 liters of hand sanitizer for our local hospital, the military, all the COVID testing centers. And the Ottawa hospital, they had to go back to their supplier, which is Purell, a very large billion-dollar company. They encouraged us to compete for the national hand sanitizer contract. Every 10 years, they put this up for contract. And I was like, there's no way we're going to be able to compete against billion-dollar companies. And lo and behold, Little Dairy Distillery was selected one of 4 vendors who could sell hand sanitizer to hospitals for the next 10 years. But here today, I'm going to talk about fuel, which is, so is this new? No, people in the 70s looked at taking whey permeate, and to make ethanol for the purpose that there was a shortage. The oil crisis, they were looking for new energy sources. And so there were plants built in the United States and New Zealand to convert whey into ethanol for transportation fuel. These plants got decommissioned over time because they couldn't compete with the volume that corn ethanol could produce. Well, we've looked at this opportunity again with a new lens, the carbon lens. So when you look at a lot of things out there with the carbon lens, the economics changes. Because now what the purpose of ethanol, rather than energy security, is carbon reduction. So ethanol is blended with transportation fuel to lower its carbon intensity. And the governments and private industry have subsidies or financial incentives to lower that carbon intensity. And that graph shows what corn gets for lowering carbon intensity, nothing, because they don't lower the carbon intensity that much, versus our permeate ethanol, which almost get $2 a gallon, which is double the spot price of ethanol. And just to put it in context, 1 ton of permeate offsets about a ton of carbon emissions. So what have we created with this beautiful sugar once again? We've created the world's lowest carbon intensity ethanol. We have not found anyone who can beat our carbon intensity score. And this is driven by 2 things. One is we worked with the EPA and to confirm that the sugar we use is carbon neutral. And so we don't have all the upstream carbon impact. And our proprietary process is very energy efficient. And so from a vision thing, or our vision statement is to convert all the waste lactose into ethanol. And if we were to achieve that in the United States alone, we'd produce over 400 million gallons of ethanol, would displace about 2.5 million tons of carbon. And that's starting to get some serious carbon reduction. So where do we get money from this? Well, one, ethanol is a commodity that's widely sold and its price is quite known. Since we're an advanced biofuel, since we're made from a waste stream, we get a premium through the renewable fuel standard. I am talking all in US context because that's where we see the biggest growth for our technology. The new Inflation Reduction Act, the Americans put their money where their mouth is when it comes to the environment, unlike us here in Canada. And so we will get about 85 cents a gallon for our ultra low carbon intense ethanol. And then there's the carbon offset itself. So this offset could be sold in a regulated market like California, but working with our partner, which I'll just mention on the next slide, we'll be selling this carbon offset to food producers who are looking to lower their carbon intensity. So if we're once again look at all that available lactose, there's the market size is about 1.6 billion for our low carbon ethanol. And this is great to do today. So already the lactose, the sugar that we need to convert into ethanol, is being aggregated because processors also have economies of scale. So they bring in milk from dairy farms to a central location, process it, and extract out the lactose. The smallest dot on this map has enough lactose or permeate to build an ethanol plant that is very profitable. So I'm really excited to say we have our first plant in hand. It's in the USA, no surprise there, since They seem to be on the edge of things, and the IRA really is spurring innovation in this space. So we're working with the Michigan Milk Producers Association. It's the 11th largest co-op in the United States with about $1.3 billion of revenue. Their Constantine, Michigan facility produces about 14,000 tons of permeate a year. This permeate will be piped, literally piped, to a distillery that will be built on their land to produce about 2.2 million gallons of ethanol. And so this ethanol, when blended with transportation fuel, will be sold to local fuel blenders to meet their mandates for ethanol, will displace about 14,000 tons of carbon, which represents 5% of the carbon footprint of the milk that Constantine processes. So a true reduction in the carbon footprint. And as many of you know, dairy is under huge scrutiny for reducing its carbon footprint. And this is one of the motivators for this project for the MMPA. MMPA is covering 85% of the $40 million plant. And we aim to start construction in a couple quarters to have the plant online at the end of 2024. And we view this, pardon for the cow analogies, since we're in the dairy industry, you have to bring them out. We view Constantine as the first of many cash cows. We don't pay for the lactose. Our partners, and that's our model, is we partner with dairy processors. They provide the lactose at zero cost, which is very different than a corn ethanol producer who has to pay for that corn. And we provide the IP. And we come together in an equal partnership to fund the plant and operate it. And this plant will kick off about almost $6 million in free cash flow from day one. So if you look at that from a return on equity, it's almost a 50% return on equity. A very, very attractive proposition. This project, 50% debt. The bank's loans have already been secured for this. We have 20% already in grants through federal and state. State of Michigan has contributed $3.5 million to the project. And we have 10 million US in IRA grants identified. So what are we looking for? We're going to be spinning out our ethanol business. That's for many operational and financing reasons. We're looking for $6 million US for the spin out to solidify its balance sheet so it could go and fund Constantine and additional plants. We want to move as quickly as possible to make use of the window that the IRA provides to get as many plants in the ground as we can. We'll be expanding the team to take on this opportunity, accelerate our research in efficiencies like yeast and lobbying for better carbon credits, and build our path to, we estimate in the next 10 years, about 40 ethanol plants. So I took advice from Raymond to keep it short and keep lots of time for questions. And a reminder, there is, if you are interested in the spirit side of things, do please help yourselves to the 3 samples of vodka in the back. Happy to take questions.
We lost them now when you said back. You have to ask a question before you head to the back for a pre-sample. Any questions? Yes, Gordon.
What's your byproduct after the distillation process and where does it go?
Great question. So we have the spent yeast and some nutrients left over. And so as part of the build, we build a wastewater management system that will take that waste, generate methane that powers the stills, and essentially our energy requirements are almost nil. We just use electricity, and that's where our carbon intensity comes from. The power in Michigan is slightly dirty, and so that's where our impact from. And there was in Constantine particularly that we will have about 1.5 million a year in revenue from MMPA because that wastewater facility will look after their dairy's existing waste stream. And so we'll be providing the dairy a service, which is not modeled in the sort of generic case.
I have a question while you're thinking, and maybe I missed it. You talk about the production side, but how do you tap into actually selling it? So where are you going to sell it?
So the ethanol is mandated to be purchased by fuel manufacturers. So there's a mandate, when you fill up at the pump, 10% of your fuel is actually ethanol. And that's mandated both in Canada, the US, and most jurisdictions in the world. And so we will sell our ethanol to people who blend that with oil to make transportation fuel.
And do you have existing contracts or?
We've already been in touch with Michigan blenders. So that's one aspect. And people often ask, well, what happens if everyone moves to electric cars? What's going to happen? We've also been in touch with people who make sustainable aviation fuel. This is fuel for airplanes, and they make it from ethanol. So they can process to convert ethanol to kerosene, and they look for the lowest carbon intense ethanol. And right now their plan is to bring in Brazilian cane sugar ethanol. Well, we have a lower carbon intensity, and we're made in North America.
I'm wondering how pure the ethanol is at the end of your process. Could it be used in a pharmaceutical type of process?
Not the design for Constantine. That's a good question. So the current plant design and the CapEx is designed to make fuel ethanol. With an additional expense, say about 10% additional budget, you could have the additional columns to get it pure for pharma use. But it's interesting, when we looked at the business model, even though pharma grade ethanol commands a premium, the carbon offset is worth more. So it's actually, you get more money if you have burning it in fuel and reducing the carbon intensity of fuel than refining it to make industrial grade ethanol, which was not the case before all these carbon pricing.
Congratulations on the pivots. You continue to pivot there. That's really well done. My question is, any chance that the dairies will, right now you talk about exchanging the permit for your IP as the idea gains some momentum, will they want something for the permit? Like you'll have to pay for it?
Well, they will. They'll be getting half of that free cash flow. So that's the model, is that we're partners through and through. We equally put in the equity into the plant, and we equally share in the free cash flow.
Okay.
And so that's we don't pay. We are paying for that lactose, but through their investment.
My question is, why not Canada? What do we have to do differently to make it work here?
There has to be, and it's starting to come. So the Inflation Reduction Act truly is a game changer. Like, it's unfathomable how much money is being put into it, and that accelerates these projects. But with the recent budget, there is now more support, and also they've actually put in some budget for dealing with lactose in Canada, because it is a problem. So we've identified the site. We know where the permit is. We know where we want to put the plant. We just need a little nudge to get it there.
Any other questions? Oh.
This is maybe not as big picture as some of the other questions, but do you see the spirit side of the business surviving the growth of the ethanol side of the business?
It's an interesting one. That sort of was some of the motivation for structurally separating the companies. The spirits business is for any spirits company is a brand building exercise, and we have a plan to build a really interesting brand, especially around the cream liquors. So it's not something we're going to ease up on in any way. You talk about pivot. It's not that we're pivoting. We're actually establishing new business lines. So the spirits business will be profitable this year, and we will continue to invest in building that brand, because that will have long-term value. I like it too, so yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I guess if any of the entrepreneurs are listening here, it sounds like there's an opportunity. There's going to be some hungry pigs based on what you're saying. Last but not least, Dr. Thomas Koch, the founder and CEO of EQCell, a regenerative medicine company with applications in veterinary and human medicine. And anybody who has a twinging knee or a hip or anything like that should be very interested in this company. So Thomas, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Stack, and thank you, Deborah, as well for the invitation, and to GRAS for giving me the opportunity here today. So I'd like to just mention CMEX, who is just down the road. So they ship frozen bull semen and bovine embryos to 100 countries around the world, including Ukraine at the moment. So cattle is still being inseminated in Ukraine at the moment with semen from this area. They ship them in these containers which are liquid nitrogen. In here, you can keep it at negative 150 degrees for 21 days. We work together with equine specialists at the Ontario Veterinary College, but also Root and Riddle in Kentucky and Colorado State University. The equine surgeons there, the specialists, are using stem cells to treat their equine patients. But in order to do so, they need to have a stem cell lab and people to do it. Whereas most horses in this area are being treated with platelet-rich plasma and other modality because they don't have access to stem cells. So when I say democratizing stem cell therapies, I mean bring stem cells out to everybody in a manner similar to what CMEX has succeeded with cattle genetics. So in here we have frozen stem cells. We can ship them around the world the same way. We shipped last week to a veterinarian that would like to try ourselves in Maryland. $250 to ship these cells is the FedEx cost. So it's very affordable. So to date, stem cells have been too expensive, too inconvenient to use. There's been a lack of IP around their use, and there has been questions around their clinical efficacy. And there has been an unclear regulatory pathway, but now products are being approved in Europe. EQ cells are affordable cells that we can globally distribute. We have a strategy to commercialize these cells and make them available. And we will partner with pharma companies for marketing and distribution. We are well capitalized at the moment to execute our development plan. Our development plan is done together with Root and Riddle Equine Hospital, University of Guelph, the Translational Medicine Institute at Colorado State University. And at the moment, we are looking at the indications of synovitis, early osteoarthritis in horses and dogs. So there's 1.1 million horses with osteoarthritis. There's 11 million dogs with osteoarthritis. We are also looking into, and we'll talk more about this, but most people probably don't realize that stem cells can be used to treat bacterial infections. And there's been a lot of talk today about green revolution and so on. But an equally big threat to humanity is antimicrobial resistance. And it's estimated that in a few years, 30 years from now, maybe 10 million people will die every year due to lack of proper antibiotics. We are also using stem cells to tissue engineer cartilage. And we have IP from the University of Alberta to freeze down cartilage tissue that we make in the lab from stem cells. And that is not trivial because cartilage is designed to bind water. That's how it gets its properties. But when you have to freeze something, you have to desiccate it because otherwise the water crystals will have sharp edges and they will destroy your cells and your tissue. But we have unique IP to make frozen cartilage through a vitrification process. So we are doing studies in horses with this, but it's more with an eye on human treatment. So that's where we consider ourselves a One Health company. We will get insights, we will treat animals, make money that way, but it will also be a stepping stone for similar therapies in the human space with less risk. So really, we are striving to produce something that's convenient, that's easy to distribute, and we are driving down the cost of stem cell production by using bioreactors. So right now it's very labor intensive to grow these cells, but we are working with a company in California to expand our cells in bioreactors, and that will greatly reduce the cost of these cells. We are currently working with a human GMP facility or laboratory in Ottawa to produce these cells, because these cells are regulated as a drug. So we are into traditional drug manufacturing, and we have to do it in clean rooms, and we're working with a facility in Ottawa to do this. So a little bit about data. We are actively enrolling horses here in Ontario with synovitis. So these are horses that are mildly to moderately lame. We will thaw the cells and then immediately inject them into the joint. And then we look at them 3 weeks and 6 weeks later, and later again. And all the horses we have treated to date has improved without any serious adverse reactions. And there's no limitations to when these horses can perform in sporting events. So there's no doping regulations around the use of these cells. So I think septic arthritis or bacterial infections of the joints or bacterial infection in general is extremely interesting. So we have IP out of Colorado State University to commercialize this. So in research horses, they injected a very nasty multi-drug resistant bacteria from humans into the joint of research horses. And they created a nasty infection within the joint. All the joints got vancomycin, which is a very kind of third level antibiotic. All the joints got that. And then half of the joints also got stem cells. So in the tube on the right, you have the control. You can see it's more cloudy versus the one on the left that's more clear. Clear is what synovial fluid or joint fluid normally looks like. That was the group that got stem cells in addition to antibiotic. The graph shows in red horses that only got antibiotic remained lame and sore much longer than the ones that got the stem cells as an add-on treatment. So we are now conducting studies in horses at Root and Riddle in Kentucky, and tonight I'll be flying down there to learn more about this study. But I think this is extremely exciting that you can use stem cells to treat bacterial infections. And then over at the far right, we have cartilages generated from stem cells prior to freezing and then after freezing and thawing, and you really can't tell the difference. So we can make cartilage, freeze it down, bring it to the orthopedic surgeon. They can use it on demand when they would like to use it to repair a defect in a knee. So as important as IP and the technology is, equally important for a startup company is the team behind it. And I think we have a very unusual team, both on the board of directors, but also on the scientific advisory board for a company of our stage. So we have people with years of experience in business, and Mr. David Allen is here in the audience today. He opened the first biotech fund on Bay Street in Toronto, and he has been in this space for a very long time, and he's our managing director. I would also like to point out Mr. C. Lewis. Zoetis is the biggest veterinary pharma company in the world, and he's the former executive vice president of Zoetis. So he really knows the animal health industry. Prior to that, he was with Pfizer. So he also knows the human pharma industry. And then at the far right, we have Dr. Wayne McElwright. He's a Hall of Fame equine surgeon. He developed arthroscopy in horses, were the first to do it. The Translational Medicine Institute in Colorado is named after him. It's a $70 million facility for translational medicine, trying to do exactly what our company wants to do. And then we have a number of equine and small animal specialists on our scientific advisory board. So I couldn't be more proud and happy to work with these people. And it's really, for a company of our size, quite remarkable. So the projections are that we in 2025, 26 can have our first product approval in the equine space. We continue to work with academia and pick up IP from academic institutions to commercialize it as a receptor company. And we believe that these insights that we gain on the veterinary side can inform similar approaches on the human side, because we know that when we go from mice to humans, 9 out of 10 times it will fail. Millions and millions of dollars wasted every year. We think our veterinary patients can be a stepping stone in between mice and human to pressure test these technologies. And then if we can make it work in cats, dogs, horses, it's more likely to also work in humans. So we're looking to expand into dogs, cats, and humans. We are doing trials in dogs now, but the primary focus to date has been in the horse. So if anybody is interested in this, I welcome a conversation about how we can potentially work together and further our portfolio. Okay.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Thomas, for those in the audience, I already know Thomas and know a bit about his company, and I came with a mental list of questions that I was going to ask, and he's answered them all in the presentation. So I'm going to go off at a tangent a little bit, and you've developed or are developing a distribution network which is robust, is built on something that we know works. Can you expand the technology to use stem cells as a treatment for sepsis in humans, which, as probably we all know, is a life-threatening condition? You've got the distribution method set up. Can you just adapt the type of cells that you're collecting and program them to be producing white blood cells or whatever's appropriate as a adjunct treatment in life-threatening septicemia, both in animals and in people?
Yeah, you can. And in Ottawa, they are actually treating humans with sepsis, with stem cells. The problem is that they use cells that they culture fresh in the laboratory. So again, you're tethered to a lab with all that expertise and all that expense in order to treat a few people at that locality. We have not pursued sepsis right now because the number of cells that you need to use for that indication are much higher. So the dose now is 1 to 2 million cells per kilogram body weight. Whereas when we're treating joints or other things, we're using 10 or 30 million cells. So at this stage of the game, we can get more clinical dosages out of it that way, because otherwise to treat a human, you need like 200 million cells. But the prospect is there, and the way we would get there is using bioreactors, and we are already doing that. So we're setting the stage for being able to produce cells in very high numbers.
Another question over
Just as a very quick follow-up and a comment, that sounds really good, and it would allow, for example, the person from this audience who tonight is in hospital in Fergus, so you can get the necessary cells to them in Fergus rather than having to transport them to Toronto or Ottawa. So no need to reply, just a comment.
Yeah, but just a comment to that, because I really think the system that I'm standing next to here, if somebody wants to use our cells, they do not need to know anything about cells. They don't need to know anything about labs. All they need to know is how to handle liquid nitrogen. And you need to top up this one every 2 weeks, and then it will keep the cells frozen. for another 2 weeks. I mean, the specs are 21 days, but you don't want to push it. So you just put it in your calendar to give it liquid nitrogen every 2 weeks, and you have cells available on demand. At the table at the back, we have a device that will thaw the cells in a controlled manner, because we also don't want people to hand thaw it or keep the vial under running water and destroy the product. So we have these devices, it's like a toaster. You put the vial in, 5 minutes later it pops up, the cells are ready to be used. Yeah.
Congratulations, and I'm really impressed with the international board and the international research team that has been done. And the millions of dollars that you've gotten grants from Canada. How do we keep this technology to the benefit of Canada? Because it has huge potential. The market in horses in the US is probably 20 times what the market is in Ontario. Canada, the regulatory system is 2 to 3 years ahead. How do we keep that technology and the benefit here and export the product, not lose the technology to the US?
Yeah, so right now, Canada has been a fantastic place for us to innovate in. We are currently supporting 3 postdocs, a PhD student through MyTex grants. Monday was the first day at work for our first full-time employee on payroll. But the tax credits that you get in Canada are very beneficial and attractive to innovate in Canada. The question is then, where do we build our first manufacturing facility if we end up being manufacturers? Is that built in Canada or is that built somewhere else? But our product definitely would allow us to build and manufacture in Canada, just like CEMEX, and then ship globally.
Just building on an earlier question, as we have, increasing climate warming and increasing transmission or jumping of animal diseases to humans, do you see an opportunity to leverage this technology to address something like Lyme disease or other similar kinds of infections that have a massive impact on the morbidity and productivity, and life health years of human populations? Not only that, but other similar kinds of diseases that might increase in frequency as we encounter, increasing warming and movement of disease-carrying vectors.
Yeah, I think what I haven't mentioned so far is that the work done in Colorado seems to indicate that the stem cells are antibiotic agnostic. And by that, I mean that they seem to work equally well with these 3rd, 4th line antibiotics like meropenem or vancomycin, which you really shouldn't use as a 1st line drug, but people do. But when you add stem cells or combine stem cells with antibiotic, it seems like something as old as ampicillin works equally well as the combination of stem cells and vancomycin. And that is a much cheaper drug. It's an old antibiotic and it's a 1st line drug. So if you use ampicillin together with stem cells, the development of antimicrobial resistance is reduced over time, and you can save these more powerful antibiotics for when it's really needed. So I don't know with regards to Lyme disease and so on, how stem cells plus antibiotic would work. The only caveat about antibiotics and stem cells in combination is that you have to make sure that the antibiotic is not toxic to the cells. So we do screen various antibiotics, and then we have a short list of candidates where we know that the antibiotic is not going to kill the cells. But otherwise, you can pretty much combine it with any antibiotic.
I think we have an online question now, and then we'll have to wrap things up.
Yes, I realize we're just at time here. So online, we have someone asking about what countries will you target for regulatory approvals?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So right now, we're very focused on making sure that our manufacturing, the way we manufacture the cells, will be satisfactory to both Europe and North America. And we're talking with FDA, very closely. We're talking with European regulators. The horse, for some historical reason that has to do with Princess Anne as an equestrian that wanted to have better access for drugs to horses in Europe, made the horse a minor species in Europe from a regulatory affairs perspective, whereas in North America, it's a major species. So there's no products approved in North America, but there are 2 products approved in Europe for horses for that reason. So we are not first in Europe, but the positive is that there is now a clear regulatory pathway for us to get a product approved. So I suspect that the first product will be approved in Europe and then followed by North America.
Thomas, thank you very much. We appreciate that, and you'll have a chance. Okay, so we started out with a broad look at agriculture as an investment class, and now we dove into the details of 5 dynamic companies, I'd say, doing some pretty exciting things. And our final speaker of the day is going to talk about ag tech as an investment and talk about the general opportunities. Jay Bradshaw is the general partner of Ag Capital Canada, a private equity company for ag and ag food that he helped found. Jay's career includes president of Syngenta Canada, chair of CropLife Canada, chair of Clean Farms Canada, director for Cereals Canada, and director for the 4-H Ontario Foundation. He was inducted to the Canadian Agriculture Hall of Fame in 2020 and received a Diamond Jubilee Medal in 2023. Jay says he's grateful for his 40-year career in Canadian ag, and I say he's just getting started. Take us home, Jay.
Well, thanks very much, Deb, for that introduction. You just kind of sound like my mother if she was still alive, but I do appreciate it. I just want to thank the Grand River Ag Society too, not only for hosting all of us here at SPARKS II, but for everything you do for the ag industry and the people in ag. It's remarkable, and it's well received. Also great to see a lot of familiar faces in the audience and hopefully on the Zoom as well. But I got to say it was a special treat to see Katie Giddy earlier today in her normal bubbly self. That was a real pleasure. I should have practiced this, but you're going to help me out, aren't you? Okay, next slide. And we got it. Well, I'm just going to set the container. This is no news probably to anybody in this room. It's been addressed earlier or talked about, but what are the major challenges that we have in this whole agricultural sector, locally and globally? The population dynamics, pick a number. Is it going to be 9.5, 9.7 billion people by 2050? This one would say 9.7. There's stats out there that we have to produce 70% more food if we're going to feed that growing population in the world. And there's a direct correlation between population and CO2 emissions. That's the far right-hand corner slide. So if we're going to reduce our CO2 output by 50%, we're not tracking very well as the population grows. Agriculture is claimed to be using 70% of our world's fresh water. That's predominantly for irrigation. That doesn't go over so well with the general public and the consumers. FAO will report that we're going to lose 250 million acres of farmland between now and 2050. Agricultural land is going to go out of production. Here in our great little province of Ontario, at the bottom left, Census Canada would say we're losing 319 acres a day. That's over 100,000 acres of prime farmland in the province of Ontario alone. And maybe we're all excited about it as consumers, with the new Volkswagen plant in St. Thomas is probably going to add to that number, isn't it? Shameful. That has to go on prime agricultural land, but that's happening everywhere across Canada. Recent report by RBC Bank, you've probably seen that. I kind of like that report. There's a lot of good statistics in there. But by 2033, they say 40% of our farm owners today are going to transition. They're going to retire. And it's going to probably be between now and that time frame of 2033, one of the most acute times, not only farm transition here in Canada, but also an acute demand for labor shortage, but also a leadership shortage in the agricultural community. The same report will quote that between now and 2033, there'll be 24,000 labor shortages in this country. That's agriculture, farm labor, greenhouses, etc. So we're going to be down 24,000 people in the labor to support a great industry here in Canada. I won't go to the far right-hand corner. You know the demographics. Farms are getting larger, but farmers are getting older, and that's just going to accentuate the entire retirement period. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we're in the right sector and we're in the right industry, I believe. This is kind of similar to what Andrea, I think, presented earlier in the day from Bonfield's, my own view and interpretation after doing a bunch of reading, but at the very top, here's the opportunities we have. Labor shortage, that's been addressed already today in some of the great companies that were presented, right? Whether it's Vivid or Mycionics, that's all due to this labor shortage. But I also add efficiency. As farms get larger, precision ag, digital ag, robotization, if that's a word, of agriculture is all going to be necessary. The climate agenda, that's been talked about all day. It's integral in every presentation of this day, but the agenda is huge. And when you add the layers of the onion, I call it, outside of the climate agenda, sustainable agriculture. What is that? We're still defining it. It's what the public wants. Farmers aren't so sure about it. But sustainable agriculture is on a lot of agendas. The next newest word now is regenerative agriculture. What's that mean? How is that going to implicate us? But there's opportunities in there. Look at all the ESG goals of any entity or major corporation that's involved in agriculture. All of that is endorsing that climate agenda. Lots of opportunities. Water speaks for itself. Utilization of water. We're very fortunate in this country. I just learned in a museum in Ottawa, we have more fresh water under the ground than we do on top of the ground, including the Great Lakes. So we're in a good position, but that's not the case all over the world. At the bottom, consumer food choice, and I'd say consumer demands. Generally, what consumers want is what is going to be delivered. A lot of pressures on us in agriculture to give them what they want. And I think that's an opportunity for investment. Policy and regulations, you know, I spent 35+ year careers in a life science-based type company like Syngenta, and I know regulations in the industry for seeds, traits, chemistry, biotechnology. It can be liberating for innovation, or it can be completely stymied under a precautionary principle. Regulations can be something we all need to watch because it can liberate the technologies, but at the same time, pay attention to regulations. Thomas just gave us a great example between here and in the UK, how they categorize horses, right? That's important information for EcoCell. Policy. I'd say the sweet spot for investing in agriculture is if something is rapidly adopted by a farmer, producer, or livestock person, the consumer population endorses it, doesn't impede it, and you've got policy to support it. I think that's the real sweet spot. But policy is, and I'll give you an example here in Canada where I think policy has positively influenced investment in agriculture. Supply chain resilience, won't go through that. We all lived through that in the pandemic, was our personal and business lives, but there's a lot of time and attention and great opportunities to make the supply chain way more resilient than we experienced over the last 3 years of the pandemic. Just want to go through a couple of examples of other VenCap companies that are fairly prominent in the ag space, what they see, what they want to focus on, and actually you'll see a theme here developing pretty quickly. But this is S2G Ventures. Pretty prominent participant in the global market, and they touch here in Canada as well. But climate smart agriculture, look what they're focusing on, robotics. That's been spoken about, myonics today. Digitization of agriculture, more precision application of inputs, only when and if they're needed. That's all about digitization. As farm scale gets larger, digitization is really important for the producers and the managers of those farms to know exactly what's going on. Alternative inputs. A lot going on in our country about fertilizer and thus fertilizer emissions. There's a lot of good investment opportunities and alternatives to that fertilizer, but it goes beyond fertilizer. It's all inputs, biologicals instead of pesticides, etc. Supply chain, you'll see again, theme optimization, either it's deglobalization or decentralization, but people want to know where their food came from and they want full transparency. And we've all been challenged with supply chain challenges in food production. Food waste solutions. 60% of our processed food is actually wasted. So there's a great investment opportunity to reduce that number, given the population challenge we've got. I won't go through all these, but consumer demands, sustainable packaging, novel ingredients, cultivated protein. We know the ramp up of plant protein activities and investment, especially in this country of Canada, whether it's soybeans or field peas, but there's more to it than that as well. Cultivated meats, call it lab meat, call it what you want, but all that is an investment opportunity. But convergence of food and people's well-being and their health. They want to consume foods actually improve their well-being. Just another couple examples, far left, another organization, but you'll see the trends here. Agricultural automation on large farms, supply chain resilience, regenerative animal protein, that's what I was alluding to. We get accused in agriculture of cows and methane. You've heard that story, read about it. Well, there's another side of that ledger will say that actually grazing non-productive cash crop land via livestock is actually good for the environment, good for regenerative agriculture. So lots of opportunities there. Water smart investments, that goes without saying. Water's important. Want to go back to this RBC report. I kind of gravitated towards it. Obviously, they'll call it the transformative 7. So precision technology, that's all in that digital space, precision ag, only using what you need, when you exactly, and lower the volume of inputs. Carbon capture, lots going on in that space, but it's a focus. Anaerobic digesters, that was touched on today. Controlled environment farming, glasshouse and vertical farming. Feed additives and supplements. Feed additives and supplements not only for human consumption, but for animal and livestock consumption to alleviate some of the potential negative effects of raising livestock animals. Agricultural biotechnology, there's still lots of space, I believe, for investment in applied science. EcoCell is a great example of that, Thomas. But in the agricultural area, we're just scratching the surface for CRISPR, RNA technology and biotechnology, and cellular agriculture as well. Lots going on in the labs to produce protein or substitute proteins for human consumption in labs. So I like that. Those are the 7 transformative that RBC has identified as they've done their cross-Canada focus groups, and this is some of the output from their report. I want to show what's in black in the bottom right, and if you can't read it, that's okay, but it's what I was alluding to me, the sweet spot for investing in agriculture, something that's rapidly adopted for good business ROI reasons from a farmer's perspective, something that's endorsed by the public, or at least they don't impede it, and equally important, something that's supported by policy. There's a sweet spot and all that. Here's, again, from the RBC report, but it just shows you that, relative to Canada, we have so much opportunity in this country, but relatively speaking to global investments in venture capital, we're extremely small. There's lots of room to grow, so that's the positive part of it. I just want to highlight a couple of things, if there is a pointer. It doesn't matter. But on the far left, you'll see that the biggest bubble is precision agriculture. So on a global level, what we've done in this country of Canada, we're about 6.6% of all the investments that have been made in precision agriculture. The next bubble is interesting because it's all around that carbon capture, and Omid spoke to that in dairy distilleries. But look at the ratio, it's 11.5%. It's the highest ratio that we have relative to the global investments in that entire sector. There's a perfect example, I believe, good positive policy is influencing the decisions and the investments in that whole carbon capture area. You can go down the line, I won't go through all these, but relatively, we're a small player in the global, but all that means to me is just lots more opportunity. On the very far right, cellular agriculture, so there's still a good venue for, I just call it applied science, and I think EcoCell is another good example of that. I want to show this from McKinsey. This is a global study from McKinsey, and we know all the trials and tribulations of, everyone talks about the macro environment we're in now. It's tough right now for startups or Series A, B, C companies to find investments, right? Because we know the rapid ramp up prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, which is the far right-hand side. Evaluations were extremely high. For us at Ag Capital, we backed away from some companies. We thought, geez, the valuations just don't make sense, and they probably didn't. But what's happening in valuations now? They're way down. Companies that were past the seed stage and are looking for a Series A type investment right now, in the last 18 months, they're not coming very fast. So they're asking for bridge financing. So a lot of acuteness in this macro environment. I think everyone's quite privy to that. But here's the optimism where that red arrow is on the far right-hand side. This is a global slide. This is McKinsey. So of all the venture capital investments, the blue line, if you can see, it's kind of where the arrow is, that's ag tech investment. So despite this macro environment, you'll see the trend ramped up in, the pandemic's outline here, 2020, 21, and 22. It ramped up. Venture capital has gone down significantly. This chart goes to the third quarter of 2022. Look what happened to ag tech. It's a very resilient sector. It's actually starting to come up again. So despite all the venture capital investments in any industry around the world, guess what? Ag tech is going against the curve in a positive way. So there's still lots of time and attention and appetite to invest in ag tech. This one is a Canadian slide. It's from the Canadian Venture Capital Association. I want to thank Sean O'Connor and Rob from Connexus for allowing me to see this report free of charge, which is always good for us at Ag Capital. But it's a great report. But again, under that macro environment, the same thing has happened. So ICT on the far left, that's information, communication, and technology. You'll see the venture capital came down in 22, or the investment in that sector. Life sciences also went down. But look at clean tech and, broadly speaking, agribusiness. 2022, under that macroeconomic environment, were record investments in Canada. So despite all the trends in the macro environment, you saw a little bit on globally from McKinsey. Look what happened in our great country. Actually, it was a record year for investment in clean tech or green tech and or agribusiness. So I think we're extremely well positioned and we've got lots of euphoria around it. So, I mean, why is ag tech and green tech a really good investment? Not only meaningful because of all the challenges I alluded to and what society is demanding, they're very, very meaningful investments. They're very powerful investments. And here in Canada, I don't know what's holding us back, I kind of do, but we should be a global leader in this area. Given the natural resources that we have in this country, not just water, but knowledge, acumen, experience. We're the 11th or 12th largest agricultural land base in the entire world. Canada's got huge opportunities. And again, if we can all continue to sort out, we're bucking the trends here from venture investment, ag tech is going up. But if we can find that sweet spot between what makes sense for a farmer, a rancher, or livestock producer, what makes sense for the general consumers, and if it's supported by good policy, there's a sweet spot. I think Canada should be a global leader. I think we're on track to do so. That's all I got to say.
Thank you very much, Jay. That was perfect. Meaningful and powerful. That's those two words just resonate. So that wraps up the formal part of our event today. It's now time to relax, enjoy a snack. I think there's more food coming. This is a Grand River Ag Society trait. They continue to feed you, but take a chance to have another snack, chat with the presenters, please. They've all got booths at the back there and the other attendees that are here. I do want to thank all the presenters, especially the founders who took their time. I think, as they've mentioned, some of them are raising money. So if you have any interest, again, take a look. And they all have companies. If the folks online, they all do have websites. You've got the company information. If you cannot get a hold of them, contact Deb, Whale, or myself, and we'll make those contacts if you're interested at all. I spoke at the beginning about being a member of the local angel investment group. And I just wanted to highlight, do you have my slide, the Golden Triangle Angel Network. So we have about 75 members, and we're part of a bigger alliance of members across Southwestern Ontario. But they're just ordinary people interested in all sorts of technology, get together once a month, see some really interesting companies, have some really good conversations, and most of us are able to make some investments that pay off in the end. So if anybody is interested in joining us, please let me know. There are several members in the audience. Do you want to just put up your hand if you're excellent? So bump into any of these people in the next few minutes and you can get any of your questions answered, and we'd love to have you out to a meeting if you're interested in joining us. Finally, thanks again to the Grand River Ag Society for hosting this event. This was the second year of their SPARK series, so we will look forward to seeing what they do next year when SPARK 3 comes out. Everybody, goodbye to our online partners. Thanks for sticking with us. Everybody else, enjoy the refreshments and the fellowship. And as I say, hopefully we'll see you again next year. Thank you.